not paying the person that I'm talking to any attention. So
I
you have
get
my
that.
full attention.
All right, 10 seconds. Sounds good. What's going on, y'all? This is your girl, Brie Undeniably, checking in for another episode of my speaker series, Deep Conversations with Dope Individuals, where we're discussing development, decision making, and a dedication to purpose. Today, as always, here with another super dope individual. Really excited to introduce him. But first and foremost, y'all know I like to get my shout outs out in the beginning or else I'll forget in the end. So, shout out to Gotham Podcast. Excuse me, Gotham Production Studio, who has now become Gotham Production Studio. They are the ones hooking it up with the space, the audio and visual. The team behind the scenes is amazing. They are always producing high quality podcasts in audio and video form. So they are the ones that have provided me this podcast studio, and I am very grateful. So shout out to Gotham. Second, shout out to MC Kicks. If you have not checked out MC, please do so. They are number one for all your customized kicks and merch needs. So they do denims and kicks. Everything is hand painted, made to order. They also have apparel. I'm wearing an MC NYC t-shirt right now. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that. And if you want to check them out, you can go to EMCEEKICKS. If you add a .com, you're going to get to their website. That's where you can put in your orders and get all of your merch. So shout out to MC. Finally, when you're doing your own thing, you got to pump yourself up. So if you have not checked out my site, that's briundeniably.com. That's where you can obviously see everything that's happening with the podcast, but you can also see everything that's happening in other realms of my business, including the podcast tour that I'm on now, speaking engagements that I'm going to be appearing on in the future, workshops, trainings, coaching, and all of my dope individual merch and I Am Possible gear. So go check that out, briundeniably.com. All right, so we are kicking into the episode. I am here with Bo Bissett. Bo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bree. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give you the introduction that you deserve, and then we're going to kick right into it.
You already did. You called me a dope individual. I think that's the first time I've ever been called dope. So that's I'll run with that if you want.
You are definitely a dope individual, and for everyone listening, I think most of my listeners know that I have made an acronym for dope as someone who is driving on purpose every day, and
Right.
you are surely doing that. I can't wait for everyone to hear more about that. So I will give you the brief introduction that
Okay.
so Bo has spent the first 4 decades of his life punishing, mutilating, demeaning, and destroying himself. Somewhere along the line, he realized those daily practices only made things worse, and despite his wishes to not move forward, he found a way. That's when he stopped trying to bury himself and instead started lifting. Amo Ni is a practice that Bo has created, and it's a blended philosophy incorporating kinesiology, which is muscle testing, meridian release points, paranamic breathing. I'm sorry,
Pranayama.
pranayamic.
There you go. You got it. You got it.
Pranayamic breathing. We'll talk about what that is.
Okay.
And NLP. Together, these practices form a heart centered clearing method that gets you out of your own way, skyrockets your intuition, and removes the controls your past emotions have over today's decisions and tomorrow's results. Bo, really excited to have you on the show. Welcome again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction.
For sure. So, obviously, I'm super excited to have you learn more about what we're talking about. Especially, clearly, there's big learning points here for me. So, really excited to get into it. But the way that I like to start is actually in the counseling community, we like to meet our clients where they're at. It's really helpful for getting an understanding of who you are beyond the biography. And I think it's great for listeners too. So, for the podcast, will you help listeners meet you where you're at?
Yeah, right here and right now.
Yeah, just to
Okay.
start so they can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm 46 years old. I live in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. I've been here for 5 years. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Asia. I've been in and out of Asia for the last 20 years. So I've lived in Taiwan, various places in Taiwan. I've lived in Vietnam, various places in Vietnam, and then traveled all over. I've cycled through Taiwan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand,
Wow.
and yeah, so.
Wow. So traveling has also been a part of your life for sure. But you,
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was running. I don't know.
okay.
You can call it. You can call it. Some people call it traveling. If you really look at the truth of behind what I was doing, I was actually running. So
Wow. Well, hey, I know we just had our own brief side conversation before we started here, and you know my love for running now. So that is incredible. Well, what I really like to do now from here, now that we know where you're at, we're gonna go to the beginning. So
okay.
the beginning of your story can be anywhere from the day you were born to the day you graduated high school. It's where you believe that your story really started to kick off, or where you'd like to bring the listeners to first.
Hmm. Well, I think all of our stories begin like right not far after we're conceived. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the work that I do is based on the subconscious programs that we installed as children. And so, that's where my journey started. That's where all of our journeys start. And the programs that I installed that dictated the way I've abused myself in life. A lot of them were, are self-worth, negative self-worth, anger, frustration. And yeah, those like really just wrecked me for for all of my childhood and the most of my adult life. So I used drugs and alcohol. Like when I said I was running earlier, I mean
Mm-hmm.
I meant like running from things.
Got it. Okay, different kind of running.
Yeah. Because of I had two accidents when I was in university, and they completely wrecked the lower half of my body. So my
Mm.
legs are just destroyed. I broke both my femurs, crushed my knee, and let's see, crushed my left ankle, and then yeah, shattered my left tibia. So it was like
Whoa.
it was actually gone. So they had to reconstruct it from my hip bone, and then use muscle from my calf and then skin from my thigh to put it all back together. I've got rods and screws, and I've had more staples and stitches in me than like you could count in 2 years.
Wow.
So
My
yeah,
goodness.
then that was what I did. I used the programming that I'd installed as a kid, and basically I didn't feel worthy, and so
Mm.
I looked for every instance to punish myself, and for the majority of my life, I bankrupted myself physically, financially, spiritually, romantically, and I basically ran away from home in my 20s because once again I had two accidents. Both of them were I was drinking in both those accidents where I got hurt. um, and then in my 20s I got out of school, I got a good job, and I started doing cocaine. And I was like, I couldn't tell my family that I after the two drinking accidents, I couldn't tell them that I did it again. So I just ran away. I didn't pack it up. I gave everything away. um, I got booked a ticket to London. I had a friend there who was in the military, and or he just gotten out. He's in the private sector then, and so I got a ticket to go see him. And then on the way to the airport, I gave my brother the keys to my car. I was like, "It's yours, man. Do whatever you want with it." And
Wow.
yeah, I just just left. And from there, I just bounced, I left and bounced around Europe and Asia, just teaching English and just literally drowning myself in alcohol and punishing myself with drugs. So,
Wow. Wow. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate your transparency and thank you so much
yeah, no
for,
problem.
yeah, for sharing with listeners because you know what you're saying, and I know in your work you also know this. Though you might have felt so alone in those moments, there are people seriously struggling and battling, and in those places that you once were. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, which is so important and really a huge part of the podcast for me. And hearing people tell their stories because it's a journey of hope and a
Mm-hmm.
journey that there is something on the other side of really, really difficult experiences and, you know, really, really difficult full lives. So
Mm.
let's. I just want to sort of push in a little bit more to your younger years experiences, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. I have no problem sharing anything whatsoever.
Okay, so first I'm you know, you talked about that negative programming and where like the self-sabotaging came in. You really
Mm-hmm.
ascribed to that from childhood all the way through
Mm-hmm.
your 20s and then possibly beyond. I just know that's where we're at in our story.
Mm-hmm.
This programming, because you know it can come from so many places, and I know
Oh,
you
yeah. Anywhere, anywhere.
yeah, let's talk about a little bit for you. Are you able to talk about where was it? Family? Was it environment? Was it a mix of those things? Was it school, social pressure? Like
Yeah.
where were you, where was the programming, and why, what were you hardest on yourself about?
I was always a competitor. My grandfather played a year or two, I don't know, professional baseball.
Okay.
And my dad went to school on a golf scholarship. And so I was like, I wanted to make my
Mm-hmm.
dad proud and, be a good sports kid too. And so but I was really hard on myself. And also when I know that when my brother was born, and this is all stuff I discovered as I was doing the work
Right.
that I do now and healing, right? So when my brother was born, I realized that like he stole my thunder. I was the
Mm.
firstborn, he was the secondborn. So, and then I felt lonely.
Yeah.
And I also realized that I didn't like school. I got good grades, but I hated going to school. I would rather be outside playing like any other kid, right? And so I used getting sick to skip school. I tell my mom, I'd hold the thermometer up to the light bulb and then, stick it back in my mouth and, get out of school. And like I was
Yep.
always faking. I had a friend that got poison ivy, and then I went into the woods and like rubbed poison ivy on myself to get poison ivy, and then I did stuff like that just to get out of school. And then I realized as doing stuff like that, I was rewarding myself by not going to school by being sick, and then by doing that, I was programming myself to get sick, to be sick, you know.
Wow.
And it was like, years later, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing that. So I mean, stuff like that was happening. And then the running thing, when I was 12 years old, my parents sat my brother and I down. They were like, "We're getting a divorce." And I grew up in a small town in
Mm.
North Carolina, and like that was the first that I mean, I knew what it was, but none of my friends had parents that got divorced.
Right.
And I was like, I just freaked out. I just like jumped off the bed, like ran out of the bedroom, right, ran through
Mm.
the house, and like out, out through into the woods, right. And I came back later that night because I was hungry. And that was the only reason I came back, right? But that was my de facto response. Like when I got anxious, when I got scared, when I got fearful or angry, like I just run.
You're
And like I
right.
realized like that was my programming. When the same thing was when I got into cocaine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I ran and I just left the States. I left a six-figure job. I was making really good money and I just ran. And then I would ended up in I ended up in Taiwan, and I ran from there. I ended up in Vietnam. I ran from there. Ended up in Spain. I ran from there. I ended up in Mexico. I ran from there. And all these times, I was also getting sick, and I was using that to get myself out of situations, and it was just complicating my life over and over and over again. And like I said, I mean, before I healed, like before, like I really snapped, like I was in Vietnam. I was passing out in the gutters in a third world country, like sniffing, snorting heroin, and while like these people are like working their butts off, and here's like white privileged me. You're just, you know, making an, can I say
Yeah,
ass?
yes, you can.
Making an, all right, making an ass out of myself, right? And it just like, but it was, it wasn't, it was just that was the way I was beating myself up with, and I couldn't figure out like what was going on, why I continued to do this. And at that point, I called my brother. Like that was in my late 30s. I was like 37. I was like, dude, I've lost everything. I have absolutely nothing left. He's like, come back, we'll sort you out. And so I got back to the States and I realized like I don't know, like I enjoyed being overseas. I just screwed that up. How am I going to get out of this? So I was like, all right, I like traveling. I'm good at riding. I'll just like start a blog, get a beat up bicycle and ride my bicycle across the states. And during that time, I'll write some reviews about places and write articles about this place and that place. And then I'll be a travel writer.
Hey,
Well,
yeah.
it did like I made it to the others I made it from East Coast to West Coast, and but nothing ever came of it. So then I went back and I ended up with my aunt and uncle, and my aunt got breast cancer, and I was still drinking like fish, and that was it. So it was basically me and my aunt and uncle. They had done all the right things. They had they had worked hard. They had saved, and they had made a really nice life for themselves, and here I was just like squandering everything. I had nothing to my name, you know and my aunt just got breast cancer, and I was like, I've tried to kill myself multiple times and it didn't work, and here's this woman who worked her butt off, and she's dying, or maybe she's got this disease that she's dealing with, that like she didn't ask for that. I've asked for all this pain, but I still didn't
Mm.
knock myself off. So it was like, all right, I got to get it together, and that's when it started. That's when my journey started.
Okay. Thank you again. I know there's so many vulnerable pieces speaking about this, and so I
Yeah, no
appreciate
problem.
you. And I guess one of my other questions, because it's so interesting, the word running. Uh,
Hmm.
do you in also sort of in combination with the alcohol and the drug use is can be sort of looked at as running, so to
Yeah,
speak,
yeah,
sort
yeah. Of course, yeah,
the
definitely.
escaping. um
Hmm.
do you feel like you were escaping or running from yourself, your circumstances, or a combination, or something else, like what?
I do know that I didn't really feel like the way that I felt about myself. I was not super confident. Like I
Mhm.
lost a lot of my confidence, and then like through all the stuff that I put myself through, right? So I just kept building this track record of failing and getting beaten down, and having all
Mm.
these accidents and stuff. Like I mean, after a while, my own worldview of myself was pretty bad, right? So the voices in my head were really, really negative. The self-talk was just brutal.
Debilitating.
And
Yeah.
yeah, really debilitating. And honestly, like the drinking actually cut it off. Like
Wow.
when I was drunk, which was most of the time, like the voices stopped. And
Mm.
and I
Wow.
was, I was a happy drunk. I was just kind of laid back and cool, but I was, yeah, it was relaxing for me, but was doing me no good whatsoever,
Wow.
obviously.
Wow. Okay, so I feel like um w- in my head I have a pretty full picture of the beginning. And
Hmm.
you also you then said when your aunt got breast cancer,
Hmm.
that was sort of the beginning of this next part, the healing
Yeah.
part of your
Hmm.
journey. Let's push into that space and learn a little bit more about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started. The first thing I was like, I stopped drinking like immediately.
Mhm.
I was like, this is it. Like, this is not working. Whatever I'm doing is not working.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have got to do it like complete 180. So I did. And I went through the normal withdrawal stuff, and but I got myself together, and I started meditating, and I just started reading everything that I could get my hands on,
Oh
just
yeah.
whatever was anything that was like self-help. I read it. And I think the first book that I read was the first self-help book I read was Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
Hmm.
And so it's basically this Silicon Valley dude that was depressed, and he basically loved himself out of the depression. And so I was like, I dig that. So I put a sticky note on my mirror. It says, I love you. And I remember looking at that note, and I was like, that's BS. Like, I hate this person. I'm disgusted by this person. And like, I can't say it. I remember just ripping it down after a while. And I kept doing the stuff that I was doing. I did Tony Robbins. I did Joe Dispenza. I did like
Yeah.
I spent, thousands of dollars on Mind Valley courses. Like I did affirmations. I did everything that I could think of. And like everything, I would take like one step forward and then just one step back. And it was
Mm.
just like, it was like a shuffle. Like I was making zero progress whatsoever, just nothing.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just brutal. And then I just kept thinking like, I've done this to myself, and I'm there's no way I'm getting out of it. Like I've just created this spiral, this cycle that I'm stuck in, and this must be my life now.
And
But go ahead.
I know I was just going to say, you said, I've done this to myself. And that seems like, to me, the one step back.
Mm,
You read the self-help book, which gets you one step forward, and you understand, but then you say, I've done this to myself because I don't like.
mm.
So I can imagine how frustrating that
Oh,
back and forth was. I can only
so
imagine.
frustrating.
But
But the thing is,
yeah.
with what I've learned with what I do now is that frustration can be our salvation, because the way
Mm,
things work is that like we have we have our conscious intentions,
yep.
right? So what our hopes and dreams are, what we want to accomplish, and then so if you imagine two gears, right? So the conscious gear would be on top, and then the subconscious gears are programming, right? So the way
Mm-hmm.
you feel about yourself, the emotions that you program that are dictating the things that you think, say, do, feel, and energize, right? So, the friction that we feel is like your conscious wishes of like, I'm gonna do this, and the subconscious like, no, you're not. And that friction, that's when we know, like, when you feel frustration, that's when like, boom, that's my thing. That's what I need to work on.
Oh, I love that visual, the two gears, the conscious and the subconscious. And it's really
Mm,
interesting because, you know, consciously speaking, we don't think about our subconscious or like to think about it or like to give it attention or like to believe that it actually has that type of power and control over us.
it
But
is so powerful.
yes.
So powerful. I did a video the other day, like this whole what is it, narcissism thing.
Mm.
It's been trending recently, right? Everybody's narcissist, no, it's narcissist. This. I just looked in the definition, the WebMD definition of narcissism, and it's like a person who oh, what was it? Can't remember exactly what it was. Hold on a second, I got it written down.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
but yeah, it's Oh yeah, narcissism, extreme self-involvement to the degree that it makes a person ignore the needs of those around them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you think of the way that the subconscious works, right? Subconscious, it runs all the inner programming, right? And it in our young childhood, what happens is like it starts embodying the emotions and the things that we experience in life. So then when another instance happens in the future, then it can cue that same response, and then keep the attention on running the inner workings of what's going on, right? So basically the subconscious programs us at a very young age, and then those programs dictate the rest of our lives, the way we feel about love, money, sex, the opposite sex, food, exercise, every single thing in the world, right?
Yes.
And so our subconscious is the most narcissistic entity, that because it just it
It's all,
it ignores our conscious self, right? So
yes.
it
Yeah.
keeps us in our
Mm.
routine. It keeps us by us staying in a routine, by doing comfortable, by us being jaded and, staying on the cell phone and just, running and staying busy. That's the domain of the subconscious. And staying in that subconscious, you are staying in the programs. To get out of that, you've got to step out and got to be uncomfortable. You've got to push yourself and you've got to you got to do things that are getting you out of that routine.
Oh, I love that you said being uncomfortable because this is something that I do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work with and speaking on. And it's, we are programmed, and this is something maybe you can answer it, maybe not, but I feel like it's a natural human tendency. So, not even programming, but biologically speaking, almost goes into that fight or flight. Like, we don't like to be in discomfort because discomfort could be dangerous, almost like a natural human instinct. However,
Yeah.
it's not that danger is around us anymore here in 2022, but well, there actually that's a lie. There's definitely a lot there's a lot of danger around us. However, different types of danger, not necessarily our ancestral danger where it was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
fight or flight instinctual response, but that place of comfort, like you said, we love to sit in it. We love to not have to step out into vulnerability and discomfort. But that's where the growth happens. That's where the realizations happen. But it's just kind of crazy because that comfort it's part of our programming, right? Like
Sure. No,
it's
it is exactly. That is the domain. That is how the subconscious works. That is how the subconscious, keeps us by being comfortable, by being in that program, by being in that routine. The subconscious doesn't have to worry about, it doesn't have to go to fight or flight. It can just stay, you know, in homeostasis or whatever. So,
yeah.
that is the control it has over us, and that's why I said so. It's that entity, that subconscious, is so narcissistic because it has that control over us without doesn't care what we hope or what we dream or the things that we want to do. It just wants to like focus on what's going on the inside, right?
Yes.
So,
And
yeah,
if we choose not to recognize it by nature of what it is, we actually could go through life without ever paying it attention. Though we
yeah, we're just asleep.
yeah, I mean again, yeah, though it would I'm sure cause complications and problems and what we're going to what you've already spoken on and such like the negativity and the debilitating thoughts and feelings and
Yeah.
such. But if we choose not to pay attention to it for our whole lives, we could do that. But it would be a really difficult and
A lot of
trying.
people do, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people just go through life, stuck on the same things and the same belief patterns, the same thoughts, the same feelings that they programmed when they were children. And those that's the sad thing is like the things that we program as children dictate our lives like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, like until we die,
Yeah.
unless we change, right?
Yes.
You know, it's really and so many people go through that, going back to the whole comfort thing, like Eleanor Roosevelt, she was I think she said something, I'm paraphrasing here, but she was like, do one uncomfortable thing each day. And and you look at like the most successful people in business or relationships or anything, like they're always pushing the envelope, right? And by doing that, by pushing the envelope, they're staying one step ahead of the subconscious, and then they're staying ahead of that programming. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
so there's so much that I feel like we could really dive into right now. But what I really want to know is sort of the inception of Amoni and how you came
Mhm.
up with this, and because it seems like we're on that track now. Where did you realize that you have these tools that you can put together to sort of create this um, new level of functioning or
Yeah.
awareness?
Let's see. Let's see. I ended up back in Taiwan, and the girl that I met, who is now my wife, um, the first night, our first date, I told her I was going to marry her, and that
I love
ended up
that.
having a,
I love that so
um,
much.
as good as we were together when we were good, like we were just as bad when we were bad, right? We
Yeah.
had some really, like really brutal
Mm-hmm.
arguments,
Mm-hmm.
and like I was already going through my healing journey, and then like she, as you know, as we met, like I brought her along, and like she started going, like she came along for the ride, and so our last argument a few years ago was like, all right, this is it. Like either because I like up until then, I had done everything on my own. Like all the
Uh-huh.
books, like I had done everything. I'd read everything on my own. I'd pulled into my own world, and like I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. I was just working on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I like excluded everybody. I had no friends, and I still have very few friends. But and I'm still working on myself and doing my own thing. But um we yeah we got to that point, and so a friend of ours is a Buddhist monk, and she introduced us to this guy who, who took people through a program called the Spiral. And it
Okay.
was invented by this Australian guy, and it is the foundation of what I do now. And my first session with the guy was like boom, like everything else I had tried like move the needle, and then I would go right back. I'd still, when
Mm.
I met my wife, like nothing had changed, like financially, like I mean, just nothing had changed. My mindset was like the meditation calmed me and settled me when I was meditating, but after that, I'd still just
Yeah.
lose it when I wasn't meditating, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I went through this program and just bam, just like that. The
Really?
first session I cried for probably half a day. And
Wow.
then as I was going through the sessions with this guy, like I lost like 20 pounds. And
Mm.
I'm about 5'10", 175 pounds, like, and I'm trim. I'm not somebody that should lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And I lost. And it was just, and that is, I've discovered, and I've witnessed this with other individuals going through this process, is that, when we embody emotions, we actually like we hold on to them. Like they
Mm-hmm.
are physically a part of us. Like we bury them in our bodies. And when I went through this process, I was basically washing out these emotions and the physical matter that they were attached to. And
Wow.
so it's unbelievable. So I went through that, and like things like instantly changed. Like my outlook in life got a lot better, but my relationship with my wife was still so rocky. The addiction thing was just. I actually got to I finished the course with him, and then I was like, man, if we've hit all these emotions that I programmed as a kid, and were keeping me self-sabotaging, then I should be able to drink. I was like, have you ever had anybody that that was, a former, had problems with alcohol or drugs, and then, tried? He's like, I wouldn't recommend it. I was like, whatever, dude. Like, if we did it, I should be able to do it. Like,
Right.
theoretically, right? And he was like, yeah, but I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I did it. And, I waited a few months, and I had a glass of wine, and I was like, oh, cool. I had a glass of wine. I've never done that before. That was cool. And then the next weekend I had two, and the next weekend I had three, and the next weekend I had a bottle. And I was like, whoa, I could feel that monster waking up
Mm.
in me again. I was like, that I didn't do it. I didn't get it. So I went back and I pieced together what I had learned from him. Um, and then I just started digging deeper, and boom, I did it. I can have a beer now. I usually choose not to, but the beautiful thing about it is it's my choice.
Mm. Oh,
Now I can
love
choose
that.
to have one,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
that is the self-awareness that happens through this work that I do now, is that it gives you a choice. It wakes you up to the things that you were doing, that you were saying, that you were feeling, and it gives you, boom, just a snapshot, and like, here's what you were doing. All right, this is you. All right, that the choices you made gave you this result. Now, if you want to make other choices to get this result, now you can do so. And so, yeah, that's the basis of what I do now, and it's like I said, it's life changing. It's amazing.
That's really incredible. And you said that this all came from the Buddhist monk that you practiced with called the Spiral was the program.
Yeah, that was the initial program, and that it really leveled me up like huge. It was unbelievable. So I went through. I now use the muscle testing, the meridian chart, which was from the spiral that I
Mm-hmm.
picked up. The practices that I learned from that muscle testing and stuff. And then I added on to it the pranayamic breath, which is the amo
Pranayama.
breath. I
Okay.
named amo ni because amo in Spanish means I love and ni in Chinese means you. So like this is a blended philosophy.
Wow.
So basically, yeah, I mean it directly translates into I love you. And also because the remember that book that I told you about, the Love Yourself First
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it. But so as I was doing this work, I actually like fell in love with myself. And so that is the goal, that when I work with people now, like I want them to be able to like, when we do this work, you will fall in love with yourself. So
Wow. Very, very empowering and inspiring. And I especially appreciate the connections that it seems like both in this practice that you're doing now, but also the ones that you've touched on, sort of that release of emotional tension and stress, also actually released physical weight. It's unbelievable the mind body connection
it
that
really is,
we
right?
have. And we love to think, again, if we stayed in our programmed ways, we'll think that these are two separate things because they feel like two separate things, and we don't even have an idea of what the mind looks like. How could we? So it couldn't be part of the physical, but it is so incredible how inextricably connected they are to each other, and that is a huge testament. But also just the fact that you're saying, you use different. I'm sorry, was it muscle meridian?
Yeah,
Mu-
muscle testing, meridian point, the
muscle te-
pranayamic breath, the amo breath, which is
it,
yeah.
it's all physical practices to
Mm,
improve mental wellness, essentially.
yeah. The
Really,
cool
really, really interesting. And I just think it's incredible the power that we have over both the mind and the body, but also the power that they jointly have together.
I agree.
Well, Bo, we are winding down in the last 10 or so minutes of the show. So there's a
Okay.
few things that I want to do. First, I'd like to do a fun rapid fire question round. And
Yeah, sure.
then after that, I'm gonna just leave you the floor to leave listeners with your final thoughts, words, ideas, encouragement, whatever you might want to leave them with, and then you can let everyone know where they can find you.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to do this rapid fire question round. At the beginning of the show, I said we were going to talk about three things: development, decision making, and a dedication to purpose. I mean, just by hearing your story, we heard the development of your process, we heard those decision making places in your life that both pushed you forward and pulled you back. The
Mhm.
ones where you said, "This is it, I'm going to quit this cold turkey, X, Y, and Z."
Right.
So you really brought us there. And purpose, it just feels like you're living in your purpose now. I might be making an assumption, but it seems like you found the place in your place in the world where you are bringing forth who you are and being able to help others with that.
Yeah, you're
So
right. That's a beautiful thing.
it sure is. So these three questions are going to be on those three things.
Okay.
The first is development. Currently, in this place in your life, do you feel like you're working more on personal development or professional development?
Professional.
Professional. All right. The next question, I'm going to ask it and then give you a little bit of a descriptor.
Okay.
So, when it comes to decision making, do you make your decisions based more on choice, meaning you follow numbers, science, analytics, etc., or guiding voice, where you follow gut feeling, intuition, spirituality, or something of that sort? Choice
Gut
or
feeling.
guiding voice? Gut
Guiding
feeling,
voice.
guiding voice. Got it. That seems to be, even the people who I bring on here who might have a more analytic or science type background. It's so interesting that so many people will say, guiding voice. You know, they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you know, the numbers can confirm, but my first line of decision making is, you know, what I'm being told with myself.
Yeah. What does it feel? I
Real
agree.
Really interesting. I love to hear people's answers to that. The final one is on purpose, and this one is sticky. I don't know that I'll ever know the answer. I kind of just like to hear people's thoughts on it. But
Okay.
when it comes to purpose, do you believe that it is something? Do you believe that it's nature or nurture, something that we're born with, and you know we discover along the way, or something that sort of comes to us along the way with experience and moments in life?
For me, it was nurture. It
Nurture.
came through my experiences.
Mm,
Some people early on just know, right? They know
yeah.
what they're. I mean, I remember I had a friend in, you know, elementary school, and they wanted to be a doctor, and they ended up becoming a doctor. It's like, that was like, when you ask them, like, when they were in third grade, like, I'm going to be a doctor. Like, really?
How do you know?
How do you know
How
that,
do you
right? And I was
know?
like, I was like 8 years old, and I was like eating Play-Doh. I was like, I don't know what I want to do, right? This guy knows what he wants to be a doctor.
I totally get that. Um, yeah, so nurture, and you know, it's one of those things where we don't know as human beings either. Are we nature or nurture? You know, and I think
Yeah,
that there's a combination of both. I think it's interesting just to look at purpose through that lens. So, um,
I agree.
in these last couple of minutes, Bo, the floor is yours. Please, whatever thoughts, ideas, or anything else that you want to bring to the audience, please feel free to do so and let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'll start off the place to find me is the website,
Great.
imgoneatclear.com. And then also the YouTube channel. Those are my two big things I'm working on right now. As far as what to leave people with, I don't know. I think just oh, take the journey. Like, don't be afraid to, don't be afraid. I hate saying don't. Be adventurous.
Okay. I like that.
And also another thing, like, be selfish. I find that when we start becoming selfish, then, not to the extent, like, like the whole narcissism, you know, example that we were talking about earlier. So you're just like, totally a jerk or whatever. But I mean, you gotta set aside time for yourself.
Yes.
You like, there's no way. My dad and my uncle both died in their early 70s, so they both died a few years ago. And I love both those men. Like, I looked up to both of them, but the thing is, like, they didn't take care of themselves. They both did stuff to their bodies that, that there's a reason they're not here. And it was always like, oh, I'll get it. No, you're not. Like, if you're not doing it now, then, why would you do it in the future, right? So, like, make yourself a priority, like, right now.
Yes.
And be selfish, and, if you need to, like, go into work a few minutes later, if, to go to, like, to walk around the block or get some exercise, or if you need to, you know, whatever you need to do, but, like, just make sure you put yourself first. Because, like, how can you take care of others if you don't take care of yourself, right? So,
Right.
and the healing thing too is, like, when you work on healing yourself, when you work on getting better, you make those around you better. So, just like, it's a whole giving thing. It's just like the whole cycle perpetuates itself. So, by being selfish, you're not being selfish,
Yeah.
because by being selfish, you're getting better, and then you're making the people around you better as well. So it's fuel for the fire.
I absolutely love it. I love the concept of reframing selfishness as well, because who is going to take care of us if we don't take care of us?
Exactly. Nobody.
Who's going to put us first if we don't put ourselves first? Obvious, it's just not. We have to. We have to embrace that selfishness, that idea that we are the ones guiding this vessel, and in order to be able to serve others, we have to serve ourselves.
Mhm.
Thank you so, so much, Bo. It was
Thank you.
a true pleasure. I
I agree.
sincerely loved this conversation. And until next time, let this be the moment. Amazing. Thank you so much, Bo. Seriously, that was so great, so well put. I loved the conversation. I think it's going to be
Oh, great.
hugely beneficial as well.
Cool. I hope so. I hope a lot of people, I hope that helps, just, I mean, that's why we're doing what we're doing, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. So this conversation, I will let you know, I am one of those podcasts that it won't release for several months. Um,
no,
but
no worries.
but I will keep you posted and let you know. I'll put it in Podmatch as well when the